pack is coming.
Tea is ready. As you can tell, the mic is ready. I'm ready. But I guess the important question is, are you ready? Hey, welcome to the Mykel Broady podcast. I am Mykel Broady. It's incredible to have you back for another season. This is season 3. But I must pause because I realize with the intake of video and different things going on, there might be new listeners, or should I call them viewers this time around? And I want to acknowledge you as well. Welcome to season 3. Analogies, anecdotes, and unapologetic aspirations. I'm aware, it's a bit of a mouthful initially, but I think it will catch on as time moves forward, and I wanted to have fun with alliteration a bit. I'm very eager to jump into season 3, the details, the meats and potatoes, all of that stuff. Side note, my grandpa says potatoes instead of like potatoes, and so it's funny that I'm starting to say that now as I'm getting older. Anyways, welcome back to the show. But I think a great place for us to start is to just make sure we're all clear on what the purpose of the show is. Kind of where have we been so far as we're in season 3? What happened in season 1? What happened in season 2? And so I'd like to start off there. And so to begin with the show, the Mykel Broady podcast, it started, if you were to ask a lot of people that know me, they would probably say it was only a matter of time. But truthfully, for me, it was more of just a realization time and time again, almost like a responsibility, a calling that I had. I would have so many incredible, meaningful, impactful conversations with people. And I would walk away feeling like, how can we share this with other people? Like I almost feel selfish for not bringing other people into this experience, into this level of growth. And so I wanted to create this podcast. And the whole idea behind naming it the Mykel Broady podcast was not to say, hey, here I am, exciting to be here, pat myself on the back, but more, I want to open up my mind to the world. Literally by sharing my experiences, the profound lessons I go through, the struggles, while simultaneously learning from the listeners, the audience, the people that come on the show, learning from their experiences, because we all have a blind spot, right? It's all about learning from one another. And the whys that support it are the exact whys I have for my own life: learn for a lifetime, redefine normal, defy the odds, and exemplify kindness. To learn for a lifetime, we always want to learn. There's never a day when we stop learning. To me, is failure. That's that definition of failure for me. So I always want to learn for a lifetime. Redefine normal. What is normal? Kind of just questioning that assumption of normalcy and looking at normal and saying, I'm not completely against it. I think there's a lot of great things that happen, but there's also a lot of bad things. There's also a lot of bullshit that we allow to continue forward just because for the sake of we've always done things this way. And I'm not for that. And so I'm about looking at things. How can we make things better? How can we improve things? So maybe it worked at one time, but it doesn't work anymore. It's all about being better and ensuring it can benefit others in the future. Defy the odds. My mother had my brother at 15, which you'll hear in the podcast. She had me at 18. And so it's just a blessing to be here, to have this life. And I always want to defy the odds because, what value do those odds have stacked against me? I'm my own person. I'm on my own journey. I'm creating history. I'm not repeating history, and put it that way. And then lastly, exemplify kindness. That's so important. I feel like so often in this day and age, we don't see enough of that kindness. We don't see enough of people just uniquely, genuinely supporting one another. And that's what I wanted to champion. That's what I wanted to lead. But that starts within. To exemplify kindness, it's not sustainable for me to try to always go there and fill people's cups. because some people just won't receive it the way that it's intended. Some people won't appreciate it. And by that, it can lower you. It can make you feel less over time. And so with exemplified kindness, truly it's all about how can you exemplify that kindness within yourself? How can you fill your own cup to allow it to overflow onto others, right? And so that they can have that kindness, so that they can feel that support from you. And it's so natural and it's genuine. It's you, right? And so those are the whys that support the podcast. And I want to touch now on the evolving purpose for the podcast is to, put simply, encourage all those around the world who desire to listen to it to be the best version of themselves, right? Like not the best version of so-and-so, the best celebrity that they think is awesome, but the person you see in the mirror. What does the best version of that person look like? And seek that, find that, be that. But how do we do that? Through sustained curiosity and collective learning, through always being curious, just like that 2-year-old child that's looking around, picking up worms in the in the mud and saying, what is this? Always having that curiosity, except for bigger and bigger problems that we can tackle, but also collectively learning. I tell people, ask yourself 2 questions, and it makes collective learning very simple and almost like this is an imperative. 1, do you believe that you can learn from life experiences? Some people would likely say, yeah, I think that's I think that's realistic. But then the follow-up question to that is, do you experience everything in life? And that's that question that's like, got you. And so by answering yes to the first one and then no, I don't experience everything, you're admitting that you have a blind spot. And so with collective learning, it's that goal of always trying to reduce that blind spot so that you can learn and become a better person. So that's the Mykel Broady podcast. That's what it stands for, the whys, the initial inspiration behind it. And so now I want to just briefly go into a recap of the first and second season. It won't be as long as the recap that I just gave on the podcast, but again, I wanted to be sure we were very clear on what this podcast stands for, especially for new listeners, new viewers coming in. And so the first season was the Why series. I wanted to go through each and every why, kind of like what I just did, except break it into different episodes so that as we begin this lifelong journey of learning here on the podcast, we're all aligned on what we stand for here. We're all aligned on what serves as the foundation. And that was very important. We were able to bring on, special guests, those in my village. I call everyone in my network village based off of the African proverb. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise me to the highest level of self. And I believe that's the same for all of us, truly, having that village around us to always push us to the best level of ourselves. And so I was able to bring on people like Coach Rich on, Defy the Odds, Mickey Revenant on Learn for a Lifetime, people that truly exemplify these topics. We were able to get insight from them, and while emphasizing the purpose behind the podcast as well. And so that was the first season. I encourage you to check that out. It was almost interesting, though. That stage, one thing you should know about me is as we go through this podcast, I really want you to not only have the final product, right, of like what this podcast is, the final product that you're listening to right now, but also the things that go on behind the scenes. Like what is my thought process? How am I growing as a host? Because I think that's incredibly meaningful. And so during that first season, it was really just, all right, let's just get it started. I was just really encouraged because, there's no blueprint, at least I don't know of anyone, to do a perfect podcast that matches what you desire to do. You just got to go do it. And I was so encouraged starting that first season because I didn't have a blueprint. I didn't know what I was necessarily doing, but I knew I was having fun, and I knew that I was going to learn a lot in the process, and that hopefully that it can impact others just like it impacts myself and the people that I've shared it with already. And so I was thankful for that opportunity. And the whole first season, there was no schedule. Like I didn't schedule out when an episode was going to be recorded. And so thus it lasted like 5 or 6 months, I think, on only maybe 5 or 6 episodes. And so it was quite a long season, but it gave me a lot of perspective. It made me learn a lot about myself, about how I can improve, how I shouldn't be as hard on myself starting a podcast. And really realigning myself to why I'm doing this, and respecting the journey, respecting the incremental growth I have along the way. So that was season 1, the Why series. Season 2 was Oxymoronic Gems. I wanted to play off the literary device oxymorons, where it's like two seemingly opposing topics put together, like comfortably uncomfortable, rationally irrational, certain uncertainty. I wanted to tie them together to show that our life, although it's very easy to go from one end of the spectrum to the other, good or bad. I'm not going to throw in politics into this one, but it's so easy to do that. But really, in my opinion, maturity, mastery, growth is in that area of gray. It's right in the middle. It's being able to see the positives of both and try to marry them while mitigating the risks, mitigating some of those trade-offs that you may face. And so that's what I wanted to bring to light. That season was really special because you got to hear a lot more unique stories. Part of this goal, like I said at the beginning, is not just to open up my mind to the world, but to learn right back from them, to learn at even the same rate. It's a two-way street always. Just because I'm the host and it's named after me, that's bullshit. We're all here to learn together. That's how I view this podcast. And I should have mentioned this at the beginning. But when you look at that logo and it's the Mykel Broady podcast and you see that the My and the podcast are the biggest things in font, it's because it's another way for when you read it, you kind of read it like, oh, this is my podcast. Like it's for me. It's a place for me to learn and feel safe and to grow and get better. And so that was really important. In that season, you got to hear from more people from my village. Andre Love, my mother was there for 2 episodes. We talked about a lot of vulnerable things. And trust me, my friends, we have much more of that coming with this season 3. And so that's where this podcast has been. We made it to season 3. I want to get something out of the way, though, before we dive into season 3. Well, I guess 2 things I want to get out of the way. 1, and also I don't want to get out of the way. Maybe that makes it seem like it's like I'm trying to rush past it, but these are definitely valuable things. But I'm just super excited to talk about the podcast, so I think that's why I kind of made it that way. 1, I have this with me, this kind of outline of the episode, and for so long, I kind of struggled with this because, I wanted to be very genuine, in my approach with this podcast. I wanted to be so infinitely authentic. I didn't want to write a script and then always just, that's what I'm reading off of. Like, so all you hear is, overview of the podcast, initial inspiration, wise, evolving purpose. Like, I wanted to bring that fire. I wanted to bring that heart. I wanted you to feel me, right? But then over time, I noticed that given that this podcast is on a public platform and it's permanent, there's some times where I was like, I wish I would have said this. And I found myself having small regrets, but regret still seems like a very harsh word, but more like, damn, I should have said that point. And I figured out that over time, what's best for this podcast for me is to, marry the two. Marry scripting and then marry being spontaneous and almost a bit of that improv. Because that's where I can maximize that value. And what I just touched on, that mastery for me is that area of gray. And so what I have here is not a word by word script, but it is something to ensure that we maximize our time together, to ensure that, in the most amount of time that I could spend in preparing, that I didn't leave any stone unturned at the moment. And that I feel very confident that ending this episode, you're walking away with so much more to understand. So with that being said, also, the second thing I wanted to touch on was a bit of a personal moment of reflection. Kind of update you on, where I've been throughout these past 2 or 3 months since we ended season 2, excuse me. I've been extraordinary. But when I say that, there's power in that, because I haven't been comfortable. It hasn't been easy, and my situation hasn't necessarily been favorable. But I've been extraordinary. I think that's profound. That's a powerful perspective to have. And I know what some people may be asking. Well, how are you extraordinary? I've been extraordinary because I've taken extra steps to ensure these ordinary moments will yield extraordinary lessons to apply onwards. So it does not matter what I go through. Rain, shine, I can get rocks thrown at me. As long as I'm taking lessons away from that and saying I'm going to make a difference with these lessons onwards, that this moment was meant for me to become better, to take these strong, profound lessons and apply them onwards. That's why I'm extraordinary. Those lessons make me feel extraordinary right now, not necessarily the things that I've been going through. And so I wanted to share that perspective with you too, because maybe you feel that way in your life at times. Maybe that's a perspective that can help you when you go through, times of struggle, times of frustration, times of confusion. You have the power to make it extraordinary, but it's all based off of the lessons you extract from those times, right? But thankfully for us, there's so many positives that you can even find them in the negatives. And so that's what we're all about here, coming with that energy, right? And so just to kind of sum it up here, what I went through wasn't extraordinary. I'll put it, very blunt. What I went through was not extraordinary. It was tough. It was frustrating, very much so at times. It was filled with hurt at times as well. So what I went through wasn't extraordinary. Rather, what I'll do because of what I went through will be. What I'll do because of what I went through will make this extraordinary. And that's the energy I hope you come with, right? And I think, truthfully, it reinforces this type of perspective, reinforces the need to make our life the content. And I use those words carefully by saying our life there and not just my life, because again, we're both contributing to this podcast. I see, learning from your perspectives. If you feel, so vulnerable and encouraged to share that, that's amazing. But you're learning from mine as well. And people told me before I started this podcast, what content are you going to talk about? How are you going to talk about something for so long? And I said, well, look at our lives. If we're present enough in our lives, we'll see that there's so many lessons that we can take away. There's so many beautiful things that we can apply onwards. And this podcast serves as a testament. This exemplifies this belief that we have so much beauty in our lives. No matter, again, no matter if it's struggle or no matter if everything's shining, we have power, right? And we want to bring those lessons to life. It's like the irony, right, of, you hear of the kind of saying, oh, seek a, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. In our literal chest, we have infinite amounts of gold, right? Shining from the radiant light within us. That radiant light is your heart, your fire, your desire, your passion. This is that Black Thought on a Funk Flex freestyle. By the way, check that out if you haven't. This is that J. Cole in the first minute 45 of my life. John Moran, I'm on my Grizzly type stuff. This is that Malcolm X. I'm willing to die behind this. I don't know if I'll even live a long life. This is that fire, though. It's within every one of us. You can't touch this energy, but trust me, you can feel it. I'll say that again. You can't touch this energy, but you can feel it. You can feel it from your head to your toes. And the beautiful thing is thankfully for us, it's within all of us. I do believe that. You feel that thing beating right there? It's within all of us. And even better, it's contagious. So what I hope this podcast serves is that source of energy for you. One of many sources of energy I hope that you have in your life to encourage you, to inspire you, to fill you with that drive to do what you do best, to do you, right? And not be tied down by what other people are saying about you, but just doing you because it looks beautiful. Trust me. That's what it's all about. So with that being said, little drum roll. I need to have some special effects here, but I'll do a little drum roll effects. We're on to season 3. Welcome. Analogies, anecdotes, and unapologetic aspirations. And I want to break down the title. So analogies. Definition is a comparison of two otherwise unlike things based on resemblance of a particular aspect. Analogies are powerful. I think just as humans, we are relational thinkers. That's one of our greatest gifts, is being able to tie seemingly opposing things that have very little in common besides just maybe a principle or two, but we're able to tie it together and apply it to a whole different field. And I think that's what makes us so great as human beings. And I want to bring that to the podcast to help us learn at a higher level. I have a friend, Swint. He actually has his own podcast called No Script Podcast. Encourage you to check it out. Hopefully he has it up on YouTube or something. If not, I'll drop a link somewhere on the website. But I was hearing in his podcast, he was bringing a really unique perspective about how, he was tying in a lot of his football experiences. He would be talking about a lesson and say, it's just like in football, how we see this. And I was like, that is what I'm talking about. Like, that's that value, because when he's tying it to football, one, it can help people understand it more, maybe even better because they're more excited about football. Maybe it catches their attention more. But two, it's a whole nother level of inclusion. It's bringing in more people that maybe wouldn't have had the chance to understand it really at that level. And I really wanted to bring this to the podcast because I really do think it helps with learning. And I've seen it proven in my own life time and time again. The other thing, anecdotes. The podcast, one thing that I've always loved about it was the stories that you would hear, whether it be, the story of, my mom, learning of the heart issue I had as a child and what she did to help me, get through that, and what she learned about me and what she learned about herself. Or maybe it's, a story that Coach Rich shared on how he would, take his son to ballet class and how the mothers would always say they really support him for that. And he learned a lot about himself through that. Like, these stories are powerful. And I realized that I want to emphasize them more, because so often they would be stuck in like 40 or 50 minute episodes that you couldn't really extract the value as easily because you had to go through a lot more content. Now, I still think that content that you would go through is good, but still I want to find a way to make it easier for you to retain these stories in a very snackable manner, if I can put it that way. So it's a way to isolate stories for maximum impact. So that's that anecdote piece to the podcast. The third is unapologetic aspirations. So aspirations, definition, is a hope or ambition of achieving something. You may notice, so I didn't say that singular. The definition was singular, but how I listed it was plural. We should have a bunch of aspirations. We shouldn't just be confined to one. But I hope that you have a bunch that we can tap into and explore and encourage you to pursue at a deeper level this season. But there's an adjective that goes in front of it, which is unapologetic. And what I mean by that is not apologizing for the striving for the future you desire. Like, striving for the future you desire rather than others' expectations. So maybe you grew up in a place where there was so much pressure for you to be something. This is what your parents want you to be. Nah, be what you want to be. Be what you are called to do. Be what you're passionate about. Be what drives you. And that can allow you to hopefully make a living, right? So that's what I want to encourage you to do. Not to try to match what other people think you should be, but to be what you truly desire to be. Because that's what's going to make the most impact on the world. Trust me. The other part is not apologizing for the insecurities of others as demonstrated through your excellence. So that's a tough one. Like, not apologizing because other people might see your excellence, might see you doing your thing, might see you just shining from being you, and they'll try to make you seem less. They'll try to pull you down because maybe at a sense, they're insecure themselves. But we're not going to be, apologizing for that. We're always going to be excellent because we're living our truth. And we're not doing it in a way that's putting others down and stomping on them and making them feel less, because that's not the case. And so that sure as hell shouldn't be the case that they're making you do that when it couldn't be further from the truth and your actions and your intention. The last kind of sense of unapologetic that I mean is not apologizing for being a lifelong learner, in the sense that you may change your aspirations over time. We're not confined to a goal that we set 2 years ago. Even though, yes, in society, it's almost backwards, where we're like, set that goal and you need to accomplish it. And if you don't accomplish it, then you're a quitter. That's not what we're going for. We're lifelong learners. We are going to set goals for ourselves that at the time seem best for us, that at the time really fuel our fire. But if there comes a time down the road that it no longer fulfills you, that it no longer gives you hope, that it no longer makes you feel like you can make a difference, then let's drop it. And there's many other things that you can pick up. So that's what we mean by unapologetic aspirations. Not apologizing for pursuing your own desires, not apologizing for other people being insecure and trying to pull you down in the process just because you are excellent and you're living your truth, and not apologizing for potentially switching it down the road. That's what we're doing, right? And so that's what represents, analogies, anecdotes, and unapologetic aspirations. It's intentionally broad. I really didn't want it to, I really just didn't want to be confined by the theme of the season. I wanted to be broad enough to where we have a million different places where we can run. As you can hear, there's plenty of instances that we have to talk about analogies, anecdotes, and unapologetic aspirations. I think of this season almost like a comparison of chips. So what I mean by a comparison of chips, what size do chips come in? Pause for kind of dramatic effect, but party size, family size, regular size, snack size, you name it. That's what I want to do with the content here on this podcast, is how can I find a way to deliver this content and it reaches different people at the stage they're at, right? So I understand, like, looking back time and time again throughout the first and second season, I was putting out, 40, 50-minute episodes, and that was great. I was encouraged by that. But some people just might not listen to that. They might not have the time for that. And so I wanted to find a way to make some of the episodes much shorter. So I designed different forms of episodes throughout the season to be different lengths so that it can fulfill different listeners, and kind of meet them where they're at on this journey of interacting and learning with the Mykel Broady podcast. But I'm also still going to keep those 40-minute episodes. But with that being said, I want to go into some of the type of episodes you can expect to see, some of the different type of chip bags, which that was not, I will admit that was not the coolest saying there, but the different types of episodes that you can see in the kind of time frames that they match up with. And so first, Monday Motivation. This will release, I plan to release it every single Monday, if not every single other Monday, but I'm pretty sure we'll stick to every Monday. These are going to be very quick, bite-sized, snack-sized, 10, 15-minute episodes of just straight encouragement. I know Mondays can be tough. I know, motivation seems to kind of be at a low at that time of week as opposed to Friday. But I want to change that. I want you to be encouraged each and every day, but also understand that Monday motivation is not, confined to Mondays. I hope that honestly, the hope is that you use what you learn in those Monday motivation episodes to guide you throughout the week, to inspire you no matter what day it is, to be honest with you. And so you have Monday motivations where I'm going to, spend about 10 or 15 minutes first starting off with kind of a quote of the week that I have that will match up with the anecdote that I'll share, as well as the call to action at the end. I'll then go in, like I said, into an anecdote, some type of story that I can relate to, a broader lesson that you can take away with, and then it will be followed by a call to action to really inspire you throughout that week. So those are Monday motivations, very brief, very snack size. Hopefully it gets the job done. The second type of episode that you can expect to see this season is Fireside Fridays. Now, I'm not going to lie, I'm really excited for these type of episodes because it's a whole nother level of immersion. So what I plan on doing is, having, these will be audio only just because of how much immersive audio effects I'll add. I still need to develop my video editing skills to get up to par with that. But with these, I'm going to have an audio where I'm going over different note cards. And as you know, if you've been listening to the podcast, I'd write note cards down. I don't know why a Band-Aid just fell out of that stack, but I write down note cards each and every day to track, what I'm learning throughout the day, what's being valuable, what should I take away from, the different experiences I go through. And so I'm going to go through the many lessons. It's been a while. I honestly need to do a better job in revisiting what I'm writing down. And that's what I plan on doing on these Fireside Fridays, is going through those lessons and sharing them with you. But I'm going to have audio effects to almost mimic like we're at a campfire. So you'll hear the snap, crackle, and pop. This is not a thing of Rice Krispies, I'm realizing. But you'll hear the crackle of, a fireplace. You'll hear, the owl hooting in the background. You'll hear crickets chirping. I won't make it too annoying because that can get, kind of annoying at times. But you're going to have all these, audio effects to make you feel like you're sitting on, this kind of uncomfortable log, or hopefully you brought your own lawn chair to pull up to the conversation. We're just going to talk about different lessons and just chat. And so those are Fireside Fridays. You can expect to see those pretty much every other Friday. And so you got Monday Motivation, Fireside Fridays, and then there's 3 true other forms of content I want to highlight. One are half-length convos. And so like I said, typically my full-length convos were about 40 or 50 minutes. So these are going to be more in the 20, 30-minute range, just covering a few topics and really emphasizing, stories of growth and resilience, rather than maybe more kind of back and forth conversational commentary and things of that such nature. And so you can expect to see half-length convos. Those would drop on Wednesdays. There's no set schedules for those. So like it's not like Monday Motivation or Fireside Fridays. You'll just see them sporadically. But of course, I'll keep you posted on our social media. And then lastly, or actually second to last, we have full-length convos, which are those 40 to 55-minute-ish type episodes where we're going into immense detail. We're rolling up our sleeves and we're really getting into these conversations for you to dive into. And I have a lot of fun guests that you can expect to see there. And then lastly, the listener feedback episode. I always want to make it a goal of mine. It's one thing to be like, hey, this is the Mykel Broady podcast and this is your podcast too, as you could see with my podcast right here. And it's a different thing to actually create a space to where people can feel like they do have ownership and feel like they do have a voice on the podcast. And listener feedback episodes is one of those ways I desire to create that type of environment. And so through that, people can respond back to different lessons they picked up on, maybe add on to something that, we were talking about, because I can't touch on everything, and I don't know everything. And so maybe you want to, share a different perspective, and I would appreciate that. And I hope to bring that to light as well on the podcast. And so that's another episode. And by the way, if you are interested in being in those, you are more than welcome to. Just go to the MykelBroadyPodcast.com, and then you'll see join the conversation. You can click there and send me MP4 or MP3 file of your feedback, and I would love to include it in the episode. And so those are the 5 different, did I say 4? Yeah, 5 different episodes that you can expect to see, all different lengths. So you have Monday Motivation, 10-15 minutes, Fireside Fridays. I didn't say that length, but those are about 15 to 25 minutes. Then you have half length, 20 to 35 minutes, full length, 35 to 50 minutes, and then listener feedback, 40 to 60 minutes. It's really going to depend on how much feedback we get. I know that my numbers were kind of mixed around there, but those are just the rough averages. And so that's season 3 of the podcast. What you can expect onwards from this video right here. At the end of the day, we're all learning here. This podcast, I'm learning so much about myself as I'm learning about the world around me, which has been so beautiful. And it's only going to get better. I trust that. Before we go into a bit of wrapping up this episode, though, of course, for those listeners that know, we always got to have a challenge. I can't just leave you empty-handed. I can't just leave you without a little bit more hope or inspiration, without something that you can do and apply onwards. And so my challenge for you this week is really asking you this question: are you harnessing your various powers? That's the question that I have for you. Are you harnessing your various powers? And so this is a bit of a follow-up from our conversation in season 1, I believe it was, regarding the looking glass self. And just as a reminder, it's a theory by Charles Cooley that was developed, I think, in the early 1900s, where he said part of our identity comes in part by how others around us see us. And I'm focusing more on who those that are really in our corner see us too, not just those that, oh, I see you in class here and there, and they have some off the wall opinion on us, but those that are with us, that are in our village, that speaks, words of wisdom to us, that give us words of encouragement to build off of, and they help us see each other. They help us see who we really are. And so, for example, I noticed within my own life that there was a bit of a lag effect. Like my mom would tell me, learning is just what you do. That's what you embody. And I was like, yeah, that's me. I know I'm the learning guy. I'm a lifelong learner. But it took me a while to really like feel that. Like after she said that, I started just observing, being more present in my time on campus, in college, or being more present in those moments when I was learning, picking up a book or thinking about something for the podcast. And it really came to light to me like I am a learner, and this is a superpower of mine. But when you have a superpower, you got to harness it. There's a difference between harnessing a superpower and acknowledging it. If you acknowledge it, then you just have it, but you really don't know how to use it effectively. Harnessing a superpower, it's good to look at the definition of what harness means. And so harness means to control and make use of, especially to produce energy, right? So in this case, you're harnessing this superpower to produce impact, to produce contagious energy for those to feed off of, to develop themselves into better individuals. That's harnessing your power. And that's what I encourage you to do, is really think about those that are in your corner. What are they saying about you all the time? What type of compliments are they giving you? And then embody that. Really take it in and think about the numerous examples that you have already showed them for them to say that to you in the first place. Once you embody that, then start to think, how can I use this whenever I desire to uplift others, to impact others, to inspire others? That is my goal for you. And we all have the superpowers. Trust me. I'm looking at you right. We all got the superpowers, and I want you to harness that, though. That's my challenge for you is, are you harnessing your various powers? Let me know. I'm thankful for the journey that we have ahead. Of course, if you ever have any questions, comments, or concerns, please just drop them somewhere on the Mykel Broady Podcast website. You're more than welcome to reach out to me as well at the Mykel Broady Podcast at gmail.com. As we close out this episode, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. No matter what time of day it is, I hope that this podcast serves a sense of inspiration for you to make it even better as you close it out. Let's get started on this journey.